Welcome back everyone. Today we'll be working on the RS6 GT Avant rims. These are those exact rims we'll be working on. So this is actually going to be quite exciting. I do hope you enjoy it as much as possible. These are the design. You can find them on Google Images. And our car design is looking really stunning. So we're going to continue with our car design, starting with the tires and then the rims. So viewing everything from the side profile, we'll go ahead and add a circle. Want to go down to the left hand side and add this circle. Well, change the alignment to view and then tab in. So that's our circle. That's quite a few vertices. I think that will be okay. If that's too many vertices, then we can always do it again. We're just gonna use S to reduce the size, scale it down, and let's turn on screencast keys. That's imperative actually. Let's press S again, continue to scale this down, and let's align it with the tire. Excellent work. What we can then do is to extrude, and then press S and extrude. Then let's change the view to the front. Press A to select all, press G and X to move this to the right hand side. Just using the blueprints there as much as possible. And let's extrude once again inwards. You can see right there where the tires are. And we're going to extrude again inwards and then scale within a little bit. Excellent. Actually, I just noticed it's scaling on the active point, so let's change that to median point. Let's go back to the front, scale in a little bit. We're just following the guide of the blueprint and the tires, following that outline. Speaking of following that outline, we can do the same thing with this group of vertices. We can move this inwards just a little bit. And it seems like the tires have a side wall, like around there. So let's move this out a little bit, kind of like that. In theory, that's our basic tire. We can insert this as well, just a little bit, and insert this as well. Now, once we add subdivision by 2, add the shade smooth, that's perfect. We can then do is select this edge and extrude once again and scale inwards. Press G and X and move that inwards just a little bit. And essentially, it's the same thing on the other side. E to extrude and S to scale inwards. And this time we will move it not inwards, but outwards just a little bit. So GX, move it to the right-hand side a little bit. We will also add another vertice, well, another loop cut around that area, and move this outwards to give the tire a volume. You know, just give it some volume. Tires are quite slim, quite thin tires to be honest, but that's okay. So believe it or not, that's our tire. And now we need to add a mirror. Let's add a mirror and let's move the mirror modifier to the top and let's use the mirror object and let's mirror this object to our cube. Excellent. So now our Audi RS6 GT Avant, it has tires. This is brilliant. Okay, so now we can start on the rims. By the way, if you want to make this tire a little bit fatter, you can. If you want to select the exterior and then scale this upwards, you can totally do that. It's really up to you. You can follow the blueprint to a T. Let's add another loop cut right there and we're going to extrude this just like that. Again, just giving a little bit of weight to the tire. And as for these vertices, we may need to scale this down. Oh yes, let's scale this down. That's ideal. Now that looks a lot better. So this is what I've been able to create so far. It's definitely not the most impressive design. So we're going to do this once again and we're going to do it a lot better. We're going to improve upon it as much as we can using what I've already learned. Like I've always insist, Google Images is our best friend when modeling this vehicle. Use it as much as you can. Use multiple images as your advantage because you can see from different angles, it tells a different story. So first thing you want to do is to understand the faces. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 faces. Plus these ones, that's 12. So perhaps 24 vertices. Let's make sure that screencast key is turned on. Let's go ahead and add a circle. Now before we do that, we're going to press Shift S and let's put the cursor to selected. Now the cursor actually went to the origin, so we need to set origins to geometry. Excellent, and let's try to do that again. Shift S, cursor to selected. That's perfect. Let's press Shift A and let's add a circle. With this circle, we said we wanted 4 vertices. Perfect. And let's change the view to align. Align to view. Essentially, let's change the align to view. Let's tab in and press S to scale down our circle. Excellent. Let's scale it up a little bit. That's pretty good. First thing we're going to do is to press E to extrude and S. Press E to extrude and S once again, scale inwards. Then we're going to extrude once again, pressing S to scale inwards. That's good. Extrude and E to scale inwards once again, and the same thing, E and S to extrude inwards. This is where our logo will be. So that's pretty good so far. Now with these ones, we know these ones need to be like moved in to the vehicle quite a bit, as you can see, similar to that. But like I said, different angles gives a different story. So we need to add a loop cut right around there, and we need to bring this out a little bit. Let's press A and let's carry all of them out a little bit. So they're sitting just on the outside of our tire, just around there. That's a lot better. Now something we need to do that's very delicate, we need to manually adjust these vertices so they're aligned with the rims, one of the most important part of the rims. And that's exactly what we'll do. We'll adjust this, scale it within. I wonder if it's scaled in too much. It's a good question. Should be fine actually, because these faces, we're going to insert these faces soon. So that's going to be looking a little bit different. But we want to make sure that these are aligned, that these are straight. That's good. And we're going to do the same thing with these. Same thing with these ones. We're going to insert these quite a bit. That's a lot better. So now with these faces, we're going to go ahead and insert these faces. So let's get them selected. Now before we go ahead and do that, let's just save this in increments. If anything goes wrong, we can always come back to our design. Let's press I to insert, and let's press G and X to insert, or just move them inwards essentially. I to insert once again, and then we can delete faces, or actually we can delete vertices. That's better. That's a lot better. Now it's looking like it's supposed to. So we're going to save again, and let's just briefly add a subdivision modifier to look at what we're dealing with. That's looking fantastic. However, there is one part that does concern me. It's this part. And I think I know how to fix this. We're going to go back a little bit just before we delete the faces. So we're just going to press Command Z to undo. Let's undo that as well. Perfect. And now we're actually going to scale this inwards, changing our pivot point to 3D cursor. Then we can scale it inwards. So you can see it follows the blueprint a lot better, and the rims. Let's insert once more with I and X, delete vertices. That's a lot better. That's definitely a lot better. That is almost perfect. And if you feel like these vertices need to be scaled out, if you feel like they're not straight enough or they're too straight, you can always just select them and scale them out a little bit. That's a little bit better. Another thing I did notice as well is that the outer edge is edged in just a little bit, like a tiny amount, honestly. So it's looking a little bit more like that. I hope this is starting to make sense. I think there's also vertices in these areas, and I think it's scaled in a little bit. Very interesting. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And I'm just freehanding this. So when it comes to the distance, I'm just taking a judge of the distance myself and I'm just scaling it inwards just a little bit. This might be a little bit difficult for beginners, but if you've been designing 3D cars a little bit, then you might understand how simple this can be done. And that's just an extra bit of detail that may seem unnecessary, but it might make a bit more sense a little bit later. Once again, let's save this in increments. Now this is the difficult part. This is where we kind of messed up our previous design, and it's basically these faces right here that were inserted, and insert again, and move this inwards. Scale it down, insert again, and then delete vertices. Something like that, and then subdivide. And to be honest, I'm just curious how this will turn out. Okay, so our next step is perhaps the most challenging. With these vertices, we're going to press double G to bring this down. And same thing with these. I'm going to press double G to adjust these. We're going to readjust this vertice line right there. We're just going to readjust it to follow the blueprint a little bit better, kind of like that. You can see that's the darker part right there. That's where that's the line we're following essentially. And with these group of vertices, that's what we're going to do. Going to press double G and just readjust them, realign them before we move forward. That's better. And once again, we save in increments. Also, another thing I might do is I might select these ones right here, these vertices, and I'm just going to move them out just a little bit because right now they're kind of indented in, and I think they might look a lot better if they're just moved out a little bit, kind of like that. That's better. Now, these faces, that's the difficult part. So we want to select our faces. Pay attention to this design right here. Just this part right there. So first it's extruded inwards, and then it's extruded inwards again. And this is the part that is then moved inwards, kind of like that. And once again, similar to what we did before, we're going to scale this down using the 3D cursor. We're going to scale this down on individual origins. So changing the pivot point to individual origins, and we're going to press S to scale this down. That's better. Perhaps a little bit more. And then using the 3D cursor, we can scale this down along those lines. That's perfect. Perhaps these vertices, we might need to adjust those manually. That's better. Then we're going to scale this down. Now you see at the top right there, you can see how simplest. Now we'll just adjust these parts as well. I have a feeling this needs to be flattened out. So this is where the manual work does come in. Same thing with those. We'll adjust those using the 3D cursor, using S to just basically scale those down. Same thing with this line, and then we'll manually adjust these additional vertices. And manually adjust once again, and scale within. We'll scale within once again, and manual adjust once again. I think that might be a little bit better right there. Okay, now this is the interesting part. These faces, we're going to go ahead and select them, and then we're going to go ahead and insert these faces. We're going to insert once and insert again. Then we can use 3D cursor and scale this down. Use origin point and scale this down also. Probably use 3D cursor again and scale them outwards just a little bit, not too much. That's a little bit better. And then we might have to do some manual adjustments. Like for instance with these ones. So we want to manually adjust those vertices kind of like that. The tricky thing is to do the same thing on all sides. So then we just have to press G and do the same thing on these sides also. That's the tricky part. But if you can do that just using G, it's worth it. It is absolutely worth it. Just manually adjusting those. And you know what? There's probably a better way to do this. So if you know of a better way to do this, please share it. Manually adjust those parts also. And let's do the final part, this area. Well, close to perfect as can be. This is perhaps the final part. Now we're going to add another vertex, well, another loop cut in there. Actually, I just realized this area, we need to insert these faces. And I just realized we don't have enough vertices to insert these faces. Let's just do it this way. Let's have those 3 faces selected individually, and let's scale this down a little bit. Right click using loop tools, turn those into circles and scale this down just a little bit, not too much. Let's press I to insert once again, and E to extrude inwards, and X. Press Shift D to duplicate these faces and carry them out. And let's press P to separate those for now. Now I think we might be able to, subdivide this now. Add a subdivision, and let's shade smooth. That's not looking too bad, is it? This circle is looking real promising. We're going to go ahead and officially make that into a circle. Probably press double G to scale this down just a little bit. Honestly, these vertices, this loop right here, we might need to select that manually, and let's try to turn that into a circle as well. Honestly, I don't know if that even has an effect. What if we try to relax it? Probably doesn't have an effect either. So for now, we might just have to do with this. But honestly, that's probably okay, especially if we scale down this line also. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad, you know. Okay, now we know we need to delete these faces, and let's see if this works. We might have to insert once again and then delete the vertices. And let's save in increments. Perfect. And then the fun part, we can start adding loop cuts. Now if this doesn't work, we can go back to the last document we saved. If this doesn't work, then we can just go back to the last document we saved and redo it. Redo all of that difficult work. So we just add in some loop tools, loop cuts to get that Audi design, and it's actually looking pretty good. We might need to add loops around there as well. That's better. Might need to add a vertex there as well, and we might need to add another loop around there as well. Or does the loop need to be there? Because I think this needs to be quite sharp, so perhaps it needs to be there. Perhaps a little bit sharper. So we got that vertex there, we got that loop right there, but it's not sharp enough. So with this one, we can select that loop and we can press double G and carry it out a little bit. And that does sharpen it up quite a bit. Okay, good. Let's continue adding our loop cuts. That's looking good. And we're just going to keep doing the same thing with each corner of this rims until it's done. That's better. So now it is completed. Well, it's not completed, but that part is done. Now we get to select the outer vertices, the actual loop, and let's use loop tools to turn this into a circle. Something to keep in mind is this won't work so well if everything is not reflected on either side. So if we try to select this loop, turn this into a circle, that's what happens. It's off alignment. So how do we fix that? Well, the problem is we missed something. That something was we didn't add a loop tool. That something was we didn't add a loop cut to this area. You can see that it aligns now. Everything is equal now. So if we try the same thing, it still doesn't work. And that's because we missed another part, this part. That also needs to add a loop right there. Well, yeah, a loop cut. Now those are the two areas we missed. So if we select that loop once again, then we go to loop tool, press circle. You can see it stays on its position. It's not off the position, which is good. That's exactly what we need. Now we can do this with the other loops also, including these ones. Perfect. We might have to do this one manually. So we might have to select this loop manually and try it that way. Ah, I found it. So that loop right there, and try to turn that into a circle also. Problem is it messes up with our design. What happens if we try to relax that part? Still messes with our design. So what we're going to have to do is to select these loops, especially this one, and press double G to scale it out. That doesn't work so well. What happens if we relax it? Still doesn't work so well. We're going to select these two loops right here. We're going to select the outer loop. We're going to scale it up a little bit using S and press G and X and move it in just a little bit. We're going to extrude this inwards using the X-axis. Turn on X-ray mode. We're going to extrude once again and press S to scale inwards. That's perfect. And then we can add some additional loops on the inside to get this right. We can hide the tire for now if you'd like, just to get a better idea of everything we're designing. That's better. So from a distance, it's not looking too bad, but if you get closer, you can see the imperfections, and that's the part I have a problem with. We can either manually adjust this, but the other option is to add a loop cut on the inside and increase the cuts. And you can see it's still not perfect. So let's try again. Let's add another loop on the inside, increase the cuts perhaps by 2. We're going to add another loop on the inside and another one also. We're going to add another loop on the inside, and from a distance this does improve the look, although I'm still not 100% happy with it. But like I said, something you could do is to manually adjust it, kind of like that, to reduce that bulge, because I really don't like that bulge. And from a distance this does look better, but it's still not perfect. Now something I'll do is I'll add a loop on the inside like that, and then the outside loop, we can relax that loop using the loop cut. And something we'll do is add a loop cut on the inside and then use our loop tools to relax that loop. But the outside loop, you can clearly see this might need some adjusting. You know what I've decided to do is I've just decided to reduce these manually. Just going to reduce these manually. Now with this edge loop, we're just going to relax that loop and add another loop cut on the inside. And we might need to scale this down a lot more, so it's a lot closer. We might add another one right there as well. And that's pretty much it. That is your Audi RS6 rims design. Now these ones right here, we need to subdivide those, tab in and extrude inwards. We're going to then insert using I and delete faces. We then need to add some loop cuts just right around there, just to clean that up entirely. And we're going to move this inside, not too much, not too little. However, that's something I don't like. Look at that. That's not looking good. What a mess. Let's adjust this as well, turn that into a circle once again, and let's select both of them, then we realign. We might need to scale it down also, but scale it down on median point. Not too much, not too little. That is a lot better. Then we need to add a loop around there and extrude that a little bit. But that part's not absolutely necessary though. That's more of a preference. Yeah, that's more of a preference. That's not absolutely necessary. Obviously, this part is for our logo, so we'll insert this part, add a loop around there. Might need to make sure that this is actually a circle before we extrude. Yeah, I thought that wasn't fully aligned. Then we can extrude and move this inwards, kind of like that. Then we can do that and turn that part into a circle as well. Make sure that's a circle. Honestly, it doesn't feel like a circle, just being honest. So maybe we need to undo that Still doesn't feel like a circle, and the best way we can test this theory is to add a circle. Let's bring down these vertices. 12 is fine. Align this to view. Tab in and scale this down. So that's our guide. So as long as that guide aligns, then that's fine. Okay. I think we've determined that it's a circle. Let's extrude inwards. Perfect. Extrude inwards a little bit more. Extrude and scale within, and fill face. Well, actually, don't fill face yet. What we will do is duplicate this and carry that outwards and separate this part. Now this part we will fill face, and we will extrude also. Insert and delete face, and insert this one also.